Welcome to The Neighborhood, a show where a mother and her daughter talk about business, community, and everything in between. Now hop aboard the trolley and let's go.
Hey neighbors, here we are. It's Gina flying solo here this week. My children are off, who knows where, working. And I just got off. I had a couple meetings. Today's been a packed day of meeting with bankers. We're trying to buy this building, and it's one of the options that finally we're looking at. And so that has got me running behind a little bit today with our podcast, but then had a meeting earlier today with someone about all of their experience, and they were struggling with coming up with ways that they could share their knowledge to get their personal brand out there as an expert. And I'm always surprised because today it's so easy to do that there's no excuse for us not sharing our wisdom, our knowledge, our experience. And then just got off a call with great friends, Dorothy and Dorothy Bullis, Dorothy and Dan Bullis in New York, who also own a co-working space out there. And she's getting ready to start a podcast. And I thought, you know what, this is what the topic, I think I've talked about this for the past probably 12 years or longer, about the problem with all of us being knowledge hoarders, in the sense of we consume so much content. We read blogs, we listen to podcasts, we watch video content. We constantly consume, whether it's news, whether it's television, whether it's on our computers, but all day long we're consuming content. How are we then digesting that content to sort through it, to then determine which one we want to file away, which one we want to share, which piece of content do we want to take action on? And when we talk about branding or the marketing side of things, you should always be looking for ways to share your expertise, to show your authority in an industry that you've earned. You've worked on things for years and you've got all this experience, but if you're not sharing it, then people don't know that you're the authority in that area. So, and I started telling the person this morning, I said, in my book that I wrote last year, Changing Directions and Starting from Scratch, the last chapter of the book was after you go through all of the process of starting a new business, going through the process. During that process, you should be journaling. What happened through the process? What were some of the struggles? How did you overcome those? Because you do want to keep track of the successes because we forget about them. You want to keep track of the things you learned in the process because we tend to face another hardship and forget that, oh, we've been through something like this before. So that whole process of journaling is really helpful. But then at the end, taking time to sit down and say, it's time to share. It's time for me to look at what nuggets I can glean from my experience to be able to help someone else. And so I want to look at all the different ways that you can share your knowledge and give you some inspiration to do so. And, you know, I love, there's a quote, let me find it here. There's a quote that Brene Brown, don't we all just love Brene Brown? Brene had a quote, one day you will tell your story of how you've overcome what you've gone through now, and it will become part of someone else's survival guide. And that is true. Anytime we go through, whether it's a challenging time, whether it's something fantastic that we learned, taking the time first to pull, I always say they're like little burrs that get stuck in our socks when we walk through a field. You go home and you have to pick them all out. I think at the end of every day, if we were to sit down and pick out those little burrs and say, what were the pieces that we learned today? What were the little, and put them in a jar and start collecting those, because again, I just think we forget the things we've come through, and we forget how strong we were. We forget how smart we were. We forget, and all we remember is the failures sometimes. So take the time to pull those little burrs out and collect them and write down what were the learning nuggets from those. And if you're, again, if you're at the beginning of a journey, if you're at the beginning of something brand new, do this daily, because it gets overwhelming to think back. I can't remember what I went through, or we just have this fuzzy memory and we forget that the important pieces and steps that we had to endure to get through the whole process. So reflect each day on things you're going through when things are tough, and whether you write them down or whether you, whether you're journaling, podcasting, whatever it is, you want to take the time to do that. I love the exercise Mr. Rogers said is to close your eyes, and even if it's for a minute, just for 1 minute, but just think of all the people who have helped you get where you are. Just, it's such a great gratitude exercise of, all the things that you've gone through and who helped you get there, because that's another part of this journal process. But if you're trying to figure out, okay, what have I gone through, whether it's a specific journey that you've been on, or whether it's your lifetime, maybe you're coming up to a milestone birthday and you want to sit down and compile nuggets that you've learned throughout that. Maybe you're looking at your life as a whole. Maybe it's just the past year, what you've gone through. But take time to, whether it's journaling, and I think I've said this many times on this podcast, of I am the world's worst journaler, because I buy journals. I have a journal addiction. I love buying journals, and I'll write one day in them, and then and then I don't write anymore. So if you're a person who journals every day, that's a fabulous way to start looking at how you can share this wisdom. But again, journaling is not necessarily sharing. So that is a way to capture and start sorting through the nuggets that you've deemed worthy of sharing. If you're looking at this as an exercise for branding, then you want to look at what are the experiences and nuggets that I have that really highlight the expertise and authority I have in a specific area that I should be sharing. Because again, if we're just hoarding knowledge, it does us no good. It's journaling is great if you're going to leave those journals behind. I've talked to somebody recently who said, I'll make sure and burn all my journals before I die. I don't want anybody reading them. And I thought that's kind of funny, because at that point, you won't be here to be embarrassed. So surely there's things in there that are of interest or that somebody can learn from. So journaling obviously is one of the best ways that you can start to gather those thoughts, and then take those and say, what do I want to do with them? To me, podcasting is an easy format. It's a great channel for anyone who doesn't like to write. If you are a person who loves to sit down every day and write, obviously that's where you want to start. If you say, I'm just not a person who can sit and type or handwrite my experiences, podcasting. Just, and don't get caught up on, I need to start a podcast and have 1 million followers or viewers. You want to do this to capture your knowledge and expertise. And so look for ways that you can just find outlets for you to share that information. So podcasting, obviously. And there are always podcasters, by the way. You don't always have to start your own podcast, kind of the OPP, other people's podcasts. Use OPP method. And that is go onto other sites that are looking for experts to be on their podcasts. And there's one called Podmatch. And Podmatch, you can put your name, put your area of expertise. Podcasters are looking for, the hosts are looking for experts to be on there. If you have a podcast, you can go on Podmatch, and there's lots of those sites out there. But that's one that I know. I think there's another called Podcast Guests, plural, Podcast Guests.com, Podmatch. There's another one called the podcasthost.com. So look for sites where you can be listed as a guest. And once you start kind of being on shows and sharing your expertise, you might find that you want to start your own podcast, but you don't necessarily have to do all that work. if you just want to find outlets to not only share your expertise, but build your audience, because now you're tapping into the audience of other podcast hosts. So that's a great way. Now, if you love writing, then blog. And again, don't get caught up in, I need a blog that is formatted a certain way. It has to be attached to my website. We have a blog on our website, but I also started a personal blog years ago just because I had stories I wanted to blog about that had nothing to do with our business. So I just grabbed the URL GinaUnplugged and .com and started writing stories that I wanted to capture there. I don't care if anybody ever saw those stories. It's just they were there for me to kind of dump at the end of a day or at the end of a week. I can put stories there so that later my kids could read those or other people would find them. But that's not my intent, is to use them to monetize. So blogging, keep in mind the word blogging is just a web log. It's a log, a journal entry on the web. So a web log got shortened into blog. And so blogging is just you sharing information, could be anything. But if you think of it as journaling online, it's a great way for you to be able to log in, and it doesn't cost anything. If you want to do a free blog site, you can go to WordPress. And if you go to wordpress.com, you're going to get a free blog site that you can set up, and they have templates there. This will have WordPress getting all the SEO. So you wouldn't want to do this if it's your business. You would want to do this if you really are just writing to be writing, and it's free. If you want to grab that domain and actually have a website that is not directly tied or giving all the click juice to WordPress, then you want to go to wordpress.org, and then you may need someone to help you get your websites built and set up on WordPress. That's the platform, but then you're paying minuscule amount. Maybe it's $2.99 or something a month to have that domain now on your own blog site. So you can definitely do that. So blogging is one that I encourage everybody. Everybody should be writing. I think, especially if you have children, it should be a law. You should have to blog. You want to share your experiences, share stories that you want to pass down that you will forget. No matter how old you are, we have so much that goes on in our life that we forget the little stories that were really impactful, which it typically is the little stories that are the most impactful, but we remember the really highs and really lows in our life. And it's those mundane, everyday stories that sometimes have the best impact. And you want to capture those stories. If you want to watch a great podcast about daily recording of your activities throughout the day, look up Stories for or Homework for Life. It's called Homework for Life, Matthew Dix. And Matthew Dix did a TEDx talk. And I believe the title of the talk is just Homework for Life. And he talks about going into, whether it's a spreadsheet or a notepad, but every day sitting down and writing, what are the little things that happen that just made today memorable? And he talks about the mundane are the ones that are the best ones to record and recall later. And then you start collecting these Homework for Life. If you are speaking or writing, or you want to use something in your business as an analogy, you can go back through your Homework for Life and find those little nuggets that you'll recall the whole story. So again, power to journaling and blogging. Okay, obviously the big one, a great way to share your expertise is write a book. And again, things have gotten so much easier to do. And so writing a book is not as daunting as it used to be. And it's super easy and very inexpensive if you do it on Amazon. There's obviously other places. I'm working with a man who's in prison, and he paid somebody $5,000 a year or two ago to publish his book. They took his words that he had written on a computer, did not edit. He didn't have formatting. He didn't have good punctuation. It just was a just vomit of words on a page. and they took $5,000 from him and they created a cover for him. They put this 30 pages when it was condensed with no spacing or punctuation. It was just horrific. And they published it for him. Today, it costs him $2.70 to purchase a copy of the book, of another version of this book that I went through and edited it for him, got it formatted. He added more in there. I had him go back through it, elaborate in areas that I felt like I needed more clarification, or beef up this one area here, or you left this part out. He gave me some photos. I added the photos in there, uploaded it on Amazon for free. All of that is done for free. It assigns the ISBN number for free. It's done so simply by creating a Google Doc and then saving it as a PDF, uploading it into Amazon's Kindle Direct Publishing tool. And he had a book with a really nice professional looking cover, with his images in there, everything. And he can now purchase some copies that he can buy for $2.70. And then he can either send those to loved ones, or people can buy them online. We're still working through some of those pieces for him since he is incarcerated. But all that to say is it costs nothing today to get a book published. And you can have somebody edit it. You can even feed it into an AI tool to say, edit this document for me, and it can go through and do a lot of the editing work. You're still going to need somebody to read through and make sure it makes sense, or to have somebody look at it. But AI will catch grammatical, it'll catch the punctuation. So again, lots of ways to share your expertise without spending a lot of money. And then the last one that I will say, in order to share your expertise out there, is you can volunteer to speak places. So you don't have to become a professional speaker, and that doesn't have to be your goal in life, is to speak on stages. But where is it that you can volunteer to speak at? Whether it's associations, whether it's at churches or synagogues, where is it that you might have the message that really needs to impact? Again, the work that I've done in the prisons, we bring in people that have stories or expertise to share with the groups in there. And there's been a couple people who have come in who have never spoken to a group about their story, but they were able to speak and share their experiences in such a powerful way that then got me thinking, you need to write a book, because their stories were so impactful. And so I feel like, there's just so much information that we've accumulated and hoarded throughout our life, that now's the time for us to sit down and say, how do I now give back and share and get this expertise out there before I'm gone and the knowledge goes to the grave with me? So I want to challenge each one of you, and I would love to hear from you. Where can you start sharing your knowledge? Don't go to the grave as a knowledge hoarder and have all of that knowledge buried with you. Make sure that you're out there talking to people, writing, blogging, podcasting, sharing your expertise so that the world can glean from your wisdom and be able to share that in turn with other people. So that's my challenge to you for the week. This is a super short, but coming to you with that message on my heart, after another day that I will need to go back and log in of lots of stuff going on here. And I would love to hear from you on how you are sharing your expertise with others. So thank you, neighbor, and get out there and meet another neighbor and maybe create more stories to share. So have a great week, everyone.